The hospital corridor echoed with the sound of my bare feet slapping against cold tiles as I stumbled forward, my hospital gown barely covering me. Blood from my foredrip stained the white fabric as I ripped it from my arm. Through the glass doors of the private wing, I could see him, my husband of 15 years, Kwame Asante, sliding a diamond ring onto another woman's finger. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. The woman was stunning, draped in expensive Kent cloth that probably cost more than my monthly salary as a teacher. Her name was Akosua Mensah, and I knew exactly who she was, the daughter of Ghana's richest gold mining family. She threw her head back and laughed at something Kwame whispered in her ear, the same way he used to laugh with me. Kwame. My voice cracked as I pushed through the doors. He spun around, his dark eyes wide with shock. For a moment, neither of us moved. The woman beside him, this Akosua, looked me up and down with undisguised disgust. Alma, what are you doing out of bed? Kwame's voice held no warmth, only irritation. You're supposed to be recovering from surgery. Surgery? I laughed bitterly, feeling dizzy. You mean the surgery I had while you were here planning your engagement to this woman? Akosua stepped forward, her gold bracelets jangling. Kwame, is this your situation? Her voice dripped with condescension. My wife, he corrected quietly, but there was no pride in his voice anymore. Soon-to-be ex-wife, Akosua said, examining her new ring. We discussed this, darling. The divorce papers are ready. I felt the world spinning. 3 days ago, I'd been rushed to Koralbu Teaching Hospital for emergency surgery to remove my appendix. Kwame had kissed my forehead, promised to be there when I woke up. Instead, I'd awakened alone to discover he'd spent those 3 days courting Ghana's mining princess. 15 years, Kwame. 15 years I've stood by you while you built your construction business. I worked double shifts to pay for your equipment when the banks wouldn't give us loans. That was before I knew what real success looked like, he interrupted, gesturing toward Akosua. Her family can give me contracts worth millions. You teach primary school children for pennies. The words hit me like physical blows. Around us, other hospital visitors had stopped to stare. Someone was recording with their phone. This domestic betrayal was about to become Lagos gossip by nightfall. My grandmother left me land, Kwame. You know this. The cocoa farm in the eastern region. Worthless bushland, he scoffed. I've already had it surveyed. Even if we could sell it, we might get enough for a decent car. Akosua laughed, a sound like breaking glass. A cocoa farm? How quaint. But I knew something they didn't. Just yesterday, before my surgery, I'd received a call from a mining company. They'd found significant gold deposits on my grandmother's land. Deposits worth an estimated $700 million. I'd planned to tell Kwame when I recovered, to share the news that would change our lives forever. Now, looking at his face, at the way he looked at me like I was something to be discarded, I made a different decision. Sign whatever papers you want, I said quietly. But I keep my grandmother's land. Of course, Kwame said dismissively. I don't want your worthless dirt anyway. Akosua whispered something in his ear that made him smile. They turned to leave arm in arm, as if I was already invisible. Enjoy your engagement party, I called after them. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. As they disappeared down the corridor, I pressed my back against the wall and closed my eyes. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe my inheritance was worthless bushland that couldn't buy a decent car. Because tomorrow, I was going to make some very interesting phone calls. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The morning sun streamed through my hospital room window as I dialed the number I'd memorized but never called. My hands shook, not from weakness after surgery, but from the magnitude of what I was about to do. Asaz Mining Corporation. Good morning. This is Omar Asante. I received a call from your geological survey team about my grandmother's property in the eastern region. Mrs. Asante, we've been trying to reach you. When can we meet to discuss our findings? I glanced at the door where Kwame had walked out of my life just 12 hours earlier. Today. Can you come to Koralbu Hospital? Within 3 hours, my small hospital room was crowded with men in expensive suits. Dr. Osei Bonsu, the lead geologist, spread maps across my bed table while his team explained what they discovered beneath my grandmother's modest cocoa farm. The deposits run deeper than we initially calculated, Dr. Bonsu said, his excitement barely contained. Conservative estimates put the value at $700 million. But if the veins extend as far as we suspect, he paused dramatically. We could be looking at over $1 billion. $1 billion. The number felt surreal, floating in the air of my sterile hospital room like a prayer answered by ancestors I'd barely known. What happens now? I asked, trying to sound calmer than I felt. We'd like to purchase mining rights immediately, said the corporate lawyer, a sharp woman named Nana Akoto. We're prepared to offer you $50 million up front, plus 30% of all future profits. $50 million. More money than I'd see in 100 lifetimes of teaching. But something in my grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Her stories about patience, about letting the land reveal its secrets in due time. I need to think about it, I said. The team exchanged glances. Mrs. Asante, this is an exceptional offer. Most landowners would accept immediately. Most landowners aren't descendants of Nana Akoto Amamoa, I said, invoking my grandmother's full name. She always said this land had secrets that would reveal themselves when the family needed them most. Dr. Bonsu smiled with genuine respect. Your grandmother was a wise woman. The geological formations suggest this deposit has been forming for millions of years, just waiting. After they left, I sat alone with the weight of this knowledge. Through my window, I could see Accra bustling below, the same city where Kwame was probably telling Akojua about his easy divorce from his worthless wife. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister Efua. I heard what happened at the hospital. Are you okay? I typed back. Better than okay. Can you come see me? And bring a lawyer. A lawyer? Omar, what's going on? Justice, I replied. Finally. That evening, Efua arrived with Kofi Mensah, a family attorney I'd known since childhood. When I explained about the mining survey, Kofi nearly dropped his briefcase. $700 million, he whispered. And Kwame doesn't know? He thinks it's worthless bushland. He said so publicly yesterday in front of witnesses. Efua was pacing the small room. We need to be smart about this, Omar. If Kwame finds out before the divorce is final. He won't, I said firmly. I'm going to let him file for divorce. Let him think he's getting rid of his poor teacher wife so he can marry into gold mining royalty. Kofi looked troubled. Omar, legally, if you're married when this discovery becomes public knowledge. The papers I signed with the mining company were dated last week, before my surgery, before he chose her over me. The discovery happened while I was unmarried in every way that matters. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. In my heart, my marriage had ended the moment I saw him put that ring on another woman's finger. There's something else, I continued. I want to buy property. Lots of it. Quietly. What kind of property? Kofi asked. I smiled for the first time in days. The kind that might make certain people very uncomfortable. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Kwame. Divorce lawyer will contact you tomorrow. Be reasonable about assets. Don't try to claim half my business. I stared at the message, remembering 15 years of supporting his dreams, of believing in his vision when no one else would, of working extra hours so he could buy equipment, of defending him when people said he'd never succeed. I typed back, "Keep your business. I just want my grandmother's land." His response was immediate, "Deal." Finally being sensible. If only he knew how sensible I was being. Don't miss what happens when Oma starts spending her newfound wealth. Hit that subscribe button to see how revenge is best served with a billion-dollar twist. The luxury car dealership in East Legon gleamed under the afternoon sun as I stepped out of my taxi, still wearing the simple dress I'd worn home from the hospital. The sales staff looked at me with barely concealed skepticism, another window shopper who couldn't afford their cheapest model. "Can I help you?" A young salesman approached reluctantly. "I'd like to buy a car. We have a nice used sedan that might be in your price range." "I want that one." I pointed to the gleaming black Range Rover in the center of the showroom. The price tag read $150,000. The salesman's eyebrows rose. "Ma'am, that's our most expensive vehicle. Perhaps we should look at something more practical." I opened my purse and pulled out a checkbook, my new account with Ghana Commercial Bank, established just that morning. Cash or check? 20 minutes later, I was driving off the lot in my new Range Rover, leaving a stunned sales team in my wake. But this was just the beginning. My next stop was Accra's most exclusive real estate office. The agent, a polished woman named Abina, clearly assumed I was lost when I walked through her door. "I'm looking for properties," I announced. "Multiple properties. Residential and commercial." "What's your budget?" she asked, her tone suggesting she expected a modest answer. $50 million to start. Abina nearly choked on her coffee. $50 million? Yes. I want to see everything you have in Airport Residential, East Legon, and... I paused dramatically, especially anything near the Mensah family compound. 3 hours later, I'd purchased 4 luxury properties, including the mansion directly across from Akoshua's family home. When Abina asked about financing, I simply wrote another check. But my real masterpiece was the commercial property I bought that evening. The entire block where Kwame's construction company rented their offices. He'd never owned the building, never imagined he'd need to. Now his landlord was his soon-to-be ex-wife, and he had no idea. My phone rang as I was signing the final papers. It was Efua. "Oma, people are talking. Someone saw you buying that Range Rover, and now there are rumors." "Let them talk," I said calmly. "Is the divorce proceeding?" "Kwame filed today. He's asking for nothing from you except to keep his business and his car. He seems eager to finalize everything quickly." "Good. And his engagement to Akoshua? They're planning a big celebration next weekend. Traditional ceremony at the Mensah compound, then a reception at the Kempinski Hotel. It's going to be the social event of the year." I smiled, watching the sunset paint Accra's skyline gold. "It certainly will be." That night, I sat in my newly purchased mansion, a sprawling property with 7 bedrooms, a pool, and a view of the entire city. The furniture was still covered in plastic, but it was mine. All of it mine. I opened my laptop and began researching. Kwame's construction company had been struggling lately. I knew this because I'd helped him hide the debt from me, never realizing he was already planning his exit strategy. But what he didn't know was that several of his major contracts were about to be terminated. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized that afternoon. "Good evening, this is Oma Asante, the new owner of the Lab 1 commercial complex. I understand you have several tenants whose leases are up for renewal." "Yes, Mrs. Asante. There's a construction company, a law firm, and..." "The construction company. Asante Construction. What's their lease situation?" "Month to month, actually. The owner never wanted to commit to a long-term lease. I see. And if I chose not to renew their lease, they'd have 30 days to vacate. Perfect. Send them notice tomorrow. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine, expensive French vintage I'd never dreamed of affording, and walked out to my new pool. Tomorrow, phase 2 would begin. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I heard you've come into some money. Congratulations. A friend. I frowned. Only a handful of people knew about my windfall, and they were all sworn to secrecy. Someone was watching me, but who? Another message appeared. Kwame doesn't deserve what's coming to him, but Akosua does. Be careful who you trust. My blood ran cold. Someone knew about my plans before I'd even fully formed them myself. Who's watching Oma, and what do they know? Drop a comment with your theories. Don't forget to share this story with someone who loves a good revenge plot. The mysterious messages haunted me through a sleepless night in my new mansion. By dawn, I'd made a decision. If someone was watching me, I needed to know who and why. I called Kofi, my lawyer, and asked him to recommend a private investigator. Oma, are you sure about this? Private investigators can open doors you might not be ready to walk through. Someone sent me messages last night. They know about my financial situation and about my plans for Kwame and Akosua. I need to know who's watching me. Within 2 hours, I was sitting across from Detective Nana Osei, a former police officer turned private investigator. She was a striking woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Tell me about these messages, she said, reviewing screenshots on my phone. They came last night. The person knows about my inheritance and seems to have inside information about both Kwame and Akosua. Nana studied the messages carefully. The phrasing is interesting. Kwame doesn't deserve what's coming to him, but Akosua does. That suggests someone with personal grievances against the Mensah family specifically. You think it's someone who knows Akosua? Possibly. Or someone who's been burned by the family before. Nana pocketed my phone number. I'll trace these messages and do some background checking. In the meantime, be careful. If someone's watching you this closely, they might not have your best interests at heart. I spent the rest of the morning at my grandmother's old house in Adenta, a modest 3-bedroom property that had been sitting empty since she passed 5 years ago. Walking through the rooms filled with her belongings, I felt her presence strongly. Her bedroom still smelled like the shea butter she used to make, and her collection of Kent cloths lay carefully folded in cedar chests. In her bedroom closet, behind boxes of old photographs, I found something that made my heart skip, a folder labeled Land Documents, for Oma's future. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, not just the deed to the cocoa farm, but correspondence with government officials, geological surveys from the 1980s, and a letter in my grandmother's handwriting dated just months before she died. My dear Oma, the letter began, if you are reading this, then the time has come for our family's greatest secret to be revealed. The land has been waiting for you, as I have been waiting to tell you the truth. My hands trembled as I read on. 40 years ago, foreign mining companies approached me about the farm. They offered money, but I refused. I knew the land held treasures that would be needed by future generations, not foreign corporations. I have waited and watched, and prayed that you would be the one to inherit when the time was right. The letter continued with details that made my earlier conversation with a SARS mining corporation seem almost insignificant. My grandmother hadn't just suspected there was gold on the land, she'd known for decades. She'd received multiple offers, rejected them all, and waited for me. There are others who know about the land's value, the letter warned. The Mensah family approached me several times, offering marriage alliances for their son to secure access. They know more than they have revealed. My blood turned to ice. The Mensah family, Akosua's family, had known about my inheritance for decades? Had Kwame's initial interest in me been genuine, or part of a longer game? My phone rang, interrupting my racing thoughts. It was Detective Nana. "I've traced your mysterious messages," she said without preamble. "They came from a secure server, but I was able to identify the sender. You're not going to believe this." "Who?" "Mensa, Akojua's older sister." I sat down heavily on my grandmother's bed. Why would Akojua's sister be warning me about her own family? "That's what we need to find out. But Oma, there's more. I did some digging into the Mensa family finances. They're not as wealthy as they appear. Their mining operations have been struggling for the past 3 years. They've been looking for new deposits, new partnerships, new sources of gold," I finished quietly. "Exactly. And your grandmother's land would solve all their problems." The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Kwame's sudden shift toward Akojua, his eagerness to divorce me quickly, his dismissive attitude about my worthless inheritance, it was all part of a larger plan. "Detective Nana, I need you to do something else for me." "What?" "Find out everything you can about Kwame's relationship with the Mensa family. How long has he really known Akojua? When did they really start their affair?" "I'm already on it." "But Oma, if what I suspect is true, this betrayal goes much deeper than a simple case of infidelity in marriage. This might be about money that could destroy both families if it's not handled carefully." As I hung up the phone, I noticed something else in my grandmother's letter, a postscript I'd missed in my initial shock. "Remember, my child, the ancestors protect those who are patient and those who are wise. But they also demand justice for those who would steal from their descendants. The land will provide what you need when you need it most." Outside, storm clouds were gathering over Accra. Inside my grandmother's house, surrounded by her memories and her warnings, I realized that the game I thought I was playing was far more complex and dangerous than I'd imagined. But I was no longer the naive teacher who'd been betrayed in a hospital corridor. I was a woman with resources, with allies, and now with the truth about my family's legacy. Let them come. The truth behind this betrayal runs deeper than you think. What do you believe Mensa's real motive is? Comment your theories below and don't forget to hit that notification bell. My phone buzzed at exactly midnight with another message from Mensa. "Meet me tomorrow at Labadi Beach. 6 a.m. Come alone, and bring your grandmother's papers." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. How did she know I'd found additional documents? Was she having me followed? Despite Detective Nana's warnings about caution, I knew I had to meet with If the Mensa family had been targeting my inheritance for decades, I needed to understand their full plan before Kwame and Akojua's engagement celebration in 3 days. The next morning, I arrived at Labadi Beach as the sun was rising over the Atlantic. The golden sand stretched empty except for a few early joggers and fishermen preparing their nets. I spotted immediately. She had Akojua's elegant features but carried herself differently, with less arrogance and more wariness. "You came," she said as I approached, her voice soft with relief. "You've been sending me cryptic warnings and apparently watching my every move. I deserve an explanation." Gestured for me to walk with her along the water's edge. "What I'm about to tell you could destroy my family, but staying silent would make me complicit in something worse." "I'm listening." 5 years ago, when your grandmother died, my father sent surveyors to her land. We'd been trying to buy it from her for decades, but she always refused. After she passed, we assumed you'd be more flexible. So you decided to use Kwame. "Not initially." Ya's voice was pained. "That was Akojua's idea. She met Kwame at a business networking event about 3 years ago. He was complaining about money troubles, about how his wife's family had land but no vision for development." My stomach churned. 3 years ago, I'd been dealing with my own health issues, working extra shifts to cover Kwame's business expenses. He'd been sharing our private struggles with strangers, painting me as the obstacle to his success. Akojua saw an opportunity, Ya continued. She convinced my father that seducing Kwame would give us access to your inheritance. But it was supposed to be a short-term manipulation, get him to influence you to sell, then disappear from his life. But it went further than that. Akojua fell in love with the idea of being married to someone she could control completely. Someone grateful for her family's wealth and status. And Kwame. Ya shook her head sadly. Kwame fell in love with what he thought our money could do for his business. We walked in silence for several minutes, the waves washing over our feet. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. Why are you telling me this? Ya stopped walking and faced me directly. Because I found out what they planned to do after the engagement celebration. They're not just going to wait for you to sell the land willingly. What do you mean? My father has connections in the land registry office. Once Kwame and Akojua are officially engaged, they plan to challenge your ownership of the property. They'll claim your grandmother's transfer to you was invalid, that there were irregularities in the documentation. I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. Can they do that? With enough money and the right connections? In Ghana's legal system. Ya's expression was grim. They believe they can. And if they succeed, the land would revert to government control, at which point my father's company would immediately file for mining rights. They've planned this for years. Decades. But there's something they don't know, something I only discovered last week. Ya pulled out her phone and showed me a document. I've been doing my own investigation into our family's mining claims. I found records showing that my father's company has been operating illegally on government land for the past 15 years. If this information became public, it would destroy them and cost them millions in fines and back taxes. Enough to bankrupt the company and probably send my father to prison. I studied Ya's face, trying to determine if this was another manipulation. Why would you help me destroy your own family? Because what they're doing to you is exactly what they did to my mother, she said quietly. My father married her for her family's cocoa plantations. Once he gained control of her assets, he discarded her for a younger woman. She died alone and bitter, watching him build an empire on the foundation of her inheritance. The pain in Ya's voice was unmistakable. This wasn't about helping me. This was about her own quest for justice. What do you want from me? I asked. I want to propose an alliance. You have the resources now to fight back, and I have inside information about their plans. Together, we can stop them before they destroy another family. And what happens to Kwame and Akojua? They get exactly what they deserve, the consequences of their choices. As we walked back toward the parking area, my phone rang. It was Detective Nana. Oma, where are you? We need to talk immediately. What's wrong? I just discovered something about Kwame's business finances. He's not just struggling, he's been embezzling money from his clients to pay for this engagement celebration. If his clients find out before he can cover the missing funds, what happens? He goes to prison for fraud. And any assets he owns, including any claim to your inheritance, would be seized by the courts. I looked at Ya, who had clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand the implications. It seems our timeline just accelerated, I told her. What do you mean? Kwame's in more trouble than he knows. And if we're going to save him from himself while protecting my inheritance, we need to act before his engagement celebration. You want to save him? After everything he's done. I thought about 15 years of marriage, of loving someone who had ultimately betrayed me. I want to save the father of my future children's respect for him. There's a difference. But as we reached our cars, I realized I'd said something that confused even me. Future children. I didn't have children with Kwame. Or did I? The mystery deepens. What secret has Oma been hiding? Don't miss the next chapter. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to find out what happens at the engagement party. The pregnancy test stared back at me from the marble counter of my new mansion's bathroom. 2 pink lines clear as daylight. 6 weeks pregnant. I sank onto the edge of my bathtub, calculating dates in my head. The baby had been conceived just before my appendix surgery, during one of the last intimate moments Kwame and I had shared as a married couple. He didn't know. He'd walked out of my hospital room to marry another woman, never suspecting he was abandoning his own child. My phone rang, Efua's ringtone. The engagement party is tomorrow night, she said without preamble. Half of Accra will be there. Are you really planning to show up? I'll be there, I said, my hand unconsciously moving to my still flat stomach. Oma, what aren't you telling me? Your voice sounds strange. Before I could answer, my doorbell chimed. Through the security camera, I saw Detective Nana looking urgent and troubled. I have to go, Efua. I'll call you later. Detective Nana entered with a thick folder under her arm and worry lines creasing her forehead. We have problems, she announced, spreading documents across my dining table. Kwame's embezzlement is worse than we thought. He's taken over $200,000 from 3 different clients to pay for this engagement celebration. 200,000? I sank into a chair, feeling dizzy. And there's more. I did deeper investigation into his relationship with Akojua. They've been planning this for 18 months, not just a few weeks. She's been feeding him money gradually, making him dependent on her family's support while encouraging him to distance himself from you. I studied the bank records Detective Nana had somehow obtained. Regular transfers from Mensa family accounts to Kwame's business, each one timed perfectly with our marriage's most difficult moments. This is emotional manipulation on a scale I've never seen, I whispered. It gets worse. Look at this. She pulled out a legal document. Akojua had her lawyers draw up a prenuptial agreement that would give her family control of any assets Kwame brings into the marriage, including any claims to your inherited land. But we're not divorced yet. Exactly. If they marry before your divorce is finalized, they could argue that Kwame still has marital rights to property acquired during your marriage. Even if he signed away his claims in the divorce, this prenup could override that agreement. My head was spinning. Between the pregnancy, the legal complexities, and the web of deception surrounding my marriage, I felt overwhelmed for the first time since discovering my inheritance. Detective Nana, I need to tell you something else. I explained about my meeting with Ya Mensa and her offer of alliance. You can't trust her, Detective Nana said immediately. This could be another layer of their manipulation. But what if she's genuine? What if she really wants to expose her family's illegal mining operations? Then she needs to prove it. Words are easy, evidence is harder to fake. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text from Ya. I have the documents you need. Can you meet me tonight? Set up the meeting, Detective Nana advised. But I'm coming with you, and we're bringing recording equipment. If she's legitimate, she won't object to being recorded. That evening, we met Ya at a quiet restaurant in OSU. She looked nervous but determined, carrying a leather briefcase that she placed on the table between us. These are copies of internal documents from my father's mining company, she said, opening the briefcase. Financial records, correspondence with government officials, evidence of illegal mining operations going back 15 years. Detective Nana examined the documents with professional skepticism while I watched Ya's face for signs of deception. Why now? I asked. Why are you willing to destroy your family's business now? Because tomorrow night, at the engagement party, they're planning to announce a merger. Mensa Mining Corporation will absorb Kwame's construction company, making him completely dependent on our family. And then... Ya's voice dropped to a whisper. Then what? They're going to ask you to attend a reconciliation meeting next week. They'll present it as an opportunity to discuss a peaceful settlement regarding your grandmother's land. But it's actually an ambush. They have lawyers prepared to serve you with documents challenging your ownership, and they plan to pressure you into signing away your rights on the spot. That's kidnapping and extortion, Detective Nana said flatly. It's business, Ya replied sadly. At least, that's how my father sees it. I thought about the baby growing inside me, about the future I was now responsible for protecting. This child deserved better than to be born into a family torn apart by greed and manipulation. I need to ask you something, Ya, and I need you to be completely honest. What? If I agreed to sell the mining rights to your family for a fair price, a real fair price, would that end this? Would they leave Kwame alone and let him make his own choice about who to marry? Ya and Detective Nana both stared at me in shock. Oma, you can't be serious, Detective Nana protested. After everything they've done. I'm not talking about giving them anything, I interrupted. I'm talking about taking control of the situation on my terms, not theirs. Ya considered my question carefully. If you offered them a legitimate business deal, one that gave them access to the gold but protected your financial interests, it might work. But you'd have to convince my father that cooperation is more profitable than conflict. And what about Akojua and Kwame? If the mining rights are secure, Akojua loses interest in Kwame quickly. She's not really in love with him. She's in love with what she thought he could help her acquire. I made my decision. Then that's what we're going to do. But not at their reconciliation meeting. Tomorrow night, at their engagement party. You're going to confront them publicly? Detective Nana asked. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse, in front of all of Accra's social elite. And I'm going to give Kwame one last chance to choose his family over their money. What if he chooses Akojua? I touched my stomach gently. Then he'll live with the consequences of that choice forever. Get ready for the engagement party confrontation. What do you think Kwame will choose when he learns the truth? Comment your predictions below and don't forget to share this story. The Kempinski Hotel ballroom glittered like a scene from a fairy tale. Hundreds of guests in their finest traditional and modern attire mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, while a live band played a fusion of highlife and contemporary music. The engagement celebration was everything Akojua had dreamed of, elegant, expensive, and designed to announce her family's continued dominance in Ghanaian high society. I stood at the entrance in a stunning emerald green Kent dress that had cost more than my monthly teacher's salary, but was now insignificant compared to my wealth. The guests' whispers followed me as I walked through the crowd. Word had spread about my mysterious financial windfall, though no one knew the true extent of it. Oma. Kwame's voice behind me was shocked and uncertain. I turned to see him approaching in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking more handsome than I'd seen him in years. What are you doing here? I came to congratulate you on your engagement, I said smoothly. After 15 years of marriage, I thought it was appropriate to wish you well in person. He looked confused and slightly guilty. The divorce papers are signed and filed, I confirmed. We'll be officially divorced within the week. So technically, this is perfectly appropriate. Akojua appeared at Kwame's side, resplendent in gold jewelry that probably cost more than most people's houses. Her smile was triumphant until she saw me, then it became predatory. How unexpected, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I'm surprised you could afford the attire for an event like this. I've had some good fortune lately, I replied, matching her smile. In fact, I have a business proposition for your family. Before Akojua could respond, the band stopped playing and her father, Nana Mensah, took the microphone. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing traditional kent that marked him as a chief, commanding attention with his mere presence. Friends, family, honored guests, his voice boomed across the ballroom. Tonight we celebrate not just the engagement of my daughter Akosua to Kwame Asante, but the merger of our families and our businesses. The crowd applauded politely as Nana Mensah continued his speech, but I was watching Ya, who stood near the back of the room. She caught my eye and nodded slightly. Our plan was in motion. Kwame's construction company will join Mensah Mining Corporation, Nana Mensah announced, combining our resources to build Ghana's future. More applause, but I noticed several guests exchanging glances. Word of Kwame's financial troubles had clearly spread through Accra's business community. And now, Nana Mensah continued, I'd like to invite the happy couple to share their vision for the future. Kwame took the microphone, his hands slightly shaking. Thank you all for being here tonight. Akosua and I. He paused, scanning the crowd until his eyes found mine. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Regret, perhaps, or uncertainty. Akosua and I are excited to build something meaningful together, he continued, but his voice lacked conviction. Akosua took the microphone from him, her confidence unwavering. What Kwame means is that we're grateful for the opportunities this union will create. My family's mining expertise combined with his construction skills will revolutionize development in Ghana. That was my cue. I began walking toward the front of the room, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Conversations quieted as guests noticed my movement. If I may, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. I have something to add to this conversation about mining and development. Akosua's face went pale. Nana Mensah frowned, clearly not expecting interruption. But protocol demanded that they acknowledge me. I was, after all, still technically Kwame's wife. Mrs. Asante, Nana Mensah said carefully, this is hardly the appropriate venue for. Actually, it's perfect, I interrupted, accepting the microphone from a confused waiter. Since we're discussing mining opportunities, I thought your guests should know about the recent discovery on my grandmother's land in the eastern region. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw Detective Nana positioned near the exit, ready to record everything, and several guests were already filming with their phones. $700 million worth of gold deposits, I announced, my voice steady and clear. Discovered last week by Accra's Mining Corporation. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Kwame's face went white. Akosua looked like she might faint. But I'm a reasonable woman, I continued, enjoying the moment. And I understand that the Mensah family has been interested in this property for many years. Nana Mensah stepped forward, his political instincts kicking in. Mrs. Asante, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Oh, but I prefer transparency, I said sweetly. Especially given the recent challenges some businesses have faced with client funds going missing. Kwame flinched as if I'd slapped him. Several guests exchanged knowing looks. Clearly his embezzlement was becoming an open secret. So here's my proposal, I announced to the room. I'm prepared to offer Mensah Mining Corporation a partnership deal. 50-50 split of all mining profits, with me retaining land ownership and your family providing expertise and equipment. The crowd was riveted now. This was better entertainment than any soap opera. But, I continued, raising my voice, this offer is conditional on complete transparency about all business practices, full repayment of any client funds that may have been misappropriated, and the dissolution of tonight's engagement. The ballroom fell silent except for the sound of champagne glasses being set down and phones recording. Akosua found her voice first. You can't be serious. You're trying to sabotage my engagement out of jealousy. I'm trying to save your fiancé from making the biggest mistake of his life, I replied. And I'm offering your family legitimate access to wealth beyond your current dreams. The question is, are you interested in business, or just in manipulation? Nana Mensa's face was a mask of controlled fury, but I could see the businessman calculating behind his eyes. $700 million was hard to ignore, even for a proud man. This is blackmail, Akosua hissed. This is capitalism, I corrected. Supply, demand, and negotiation. Your family wants access to gold. I have gold. Let's make a deal that benefits everyone instead of playing games that benefit no one. Kwame finally found his voice. Alma, what are you doing? I'm giving you a choice, Kwame. The same choice I thought you made in that hospital corridor. I turned to address him directly, my voice softening. Choose money and status with a family that sees you as a pawn, or choose partnership with someone who actually wants to build something real with you. But we're divorced. The papers can be unsigned as easily as they were signed, I said. If you want them to be. The room held its breath. Hundreds of eyes watched as Kwame looked between me and Akosua, his face a study in conflict. Finally, he spoke. I need time to think. Time's up, Akosua snapped, grabbing his arm. Choose now, or lose both opportunities forever. But as she touched him, Kwame stepped back. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked at Akosua without the dazzled expression of a man bedazzled by wealth and beauty. What exactly have I gained from this relationship? He asked her quietly. Besides debt, lies, and the loss of everything that actually mattered. The engagement party of the year was about to become the scandal of the decade. What will Kwame choose? The shocking conclusion is coming. Drop your predictions in the comments and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this ends. Akosua's face cycled through shock, rage, and calculation in the span of seconds. The Golden Ballroom had become a theater, and every guest was leaning forward to catch the drama unfolding before them. Kwame, she said, her voice taking on the honey-sweet tone I'd heard her use to manipulate him before. You're being emotional. Think about what we've built together, what we could accomplish with my family's resources. What we've built. Kwame's laugh was bitter. Akosua, I'm $200,000 in debt because of this engagement party. I've lied to my clients, stolen from people who trusted me, and destroyed a 15-year marriage for what? For the privilege of being your family's employee. Nana Mensa stepped forward, his voice commanding. Young man, you're making a mistake that will cost you everything. My daughter is offering you opportunities. That come with chains attached, Kwame interrupted, and I felt a spark of the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Sir, with all due respect, your daughter has been feeding me money for months to make me dependent, isolating me from my wife, and encouraging me to make financial decisions that could land me in prison. The crowd gasped. This was no longer just about a broken engagement. This was about financial manipulation and corporate espionage. Furthermore, Kwame continued, his voice gaining strength, I've learned some interesting things about your family's business practices while preparing for this merger. Ya stepped forward from the back of the room, her phone in her hand. Should I play the recordings now, or would you prefer to explain yourself, father? Nana Mensa's face went ashen. Yeah, what do you think you're doing? What someone should have done 20 years ago, she replied, pressing play on her phone. Her father's voice filled the ballroom through the sound system. The government inspectors can be bought for $50,000 each. We've been mining illegally on state land for 15 years, but as long as the right officials are paid, no one asks questions. The room erupted. Guests were frantically texting, calling, and recording. Several prominent businessmen began moving toward the exits. Being associated with illegal mining operations could destroy reputations and business relationships overnight. Those recordings are taken out of context. Nana Mensa shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos. I stepped forward, still holding the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just one more moment. The crowd quieted slightly, everyone eager to see what would happen next in this unprecedented public disgrace. I want to be clear about my offer, I announced. It stands regardless of tonight's personal decisions. Mensa Mining Corporation can partner with me legally and legitimately, or they can continue their current practices and face the legal consequences. Either way, my grandmother's land will be developed responsibly and profitably. And what about Kwame? Someone shouted from the crowd. I looked at my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, or perhaps not, and realized that despite everything, I still loved him. Not the man who had betrayed me, but the man who was finally standing up for himself. That's Kwame's choice to make, I said into the microphone. But I should mention that any decision he makes should take into account all relevant information. Kwame frowned. What do you mean? My heart pounded as I prepared to reveal the secret I'd been carrying. I mean that our divorce papers might be more complicated to finalize than we thought, given that I'm 6 weeks pregnant with your child. The ballroom fell so silent that you could hear the air conditioning humming. Kwame stared at me in complete shock. Akojua's mouth fell open. Even Nana Mensa seemed speechless. Pregnant? Kwame whispered. Conceived just before my surgery. Before you decided to leave me for her. I gestured toward Akojua. So yes, Kwame, you have choices to make. But now you know all the facts. Akojua recovered first, her voice shrill with desperation. It could be anyone's baby. She's just trying to trap you. Actually, Detective Nana stepped forward, producing a folder. I have medical records here that confirm both the pregnancy and the timing. And I also have documentation of Mr. Asante's embezzlement, ready to be filed with the police unless full restitution is made to his clients within 48 hours. The threads of manipulation and deceit were unraveling faster than anyone could keep track of. I watched Kwame's face as he processed everything. The pregnancy, the embezzlement consequences, the illegal mining revelations, and the choice between two very different futures. Alma, he said finally, his voice barely audible over the crowd noise. Is this real? All of it. The pregnancy is real. The gold deposits are real. The choice you have to make is real. I walked closer to him, lowering my voice so only he could hear. But so is the fact that I'm not the same woman you left in that hospital bed. I have options now, with or without you. And if I choose you, choose us. Then we build something better than what we had before. Something based on honesty instead of secrets, partnership instead of manipulation. I paused. And we raise our child to understand that family loyalty matters more than money. Kwame looked around the ballroom, at the chaos, at Akojua's furious face, at her father's political maneuvering, at the guests recording every moment for social media. Then he looked back at me, and for the first time in months, I saw the man I'd married. I choose you, he said simply. I choose our family. Akojua let out a scream of pure rage. You're both insane. You're throwing away everything for what? A pregnancy that might not even last, land that might be worthless, and a marriage that was already dead. Actually, Yar interjected, still holding her phone, the geological surveys confirm that Alma's land is worth more than our family's entire current operation. So if anything, Kwame is making the smart business decision. You traitor. Akojua whirled on her sister. How could you sabotage your own family? I'm trying to save our family, Ya replied calmly. From itself. As security began escorting increasingly agitated guests toward the exits, I realized that this engagement party had become something none of us had planned. A public reckoning with years of lies, manipulation, and hidden agendas. But as Kwame took my hand and squeezed it gently, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The engagement party everyone will be talking about for years. But is this really the end of the Mensah family's schemes? Don't miss the final chapters to see if Alma and Kwame can truly rebuild their marriage. 3 weeks after the engagement party that became Accra's most talked about scandal, I sat in my lawyer's office reviewing the final details of the most complex business deal of my life. Kofi spread papers across his conference table while Detective Nana provided security updates and Kwame reviewed construction contracts for the mining operation. The transformation in my husband over those 3 weeks had been remarkable. The guilt and desperation that had driven him to steal from clients had been replaced by focused determination to make things right. He'd spent every day since the engagement party meeting with the people he'd wronged, arranging payment plans and rebuilding trust. The last client payment will be completed tomorrow, he reported, looking exhausted but relieved. Detective Nana's contacts in the prosecutor's office have agreed not to file charges as long as full restitution is made. And the Mensah family situation? I asked. Detective Nana consulted her notes. Nana Mensah has agreed to cooperate with the government investigation into illegal mining practices in exchange for reduced penalties. The family will pay substantial fines, but they'll avoid prison time. What about Akosua and Ya? Ya has been granted immunity in exchange for her testimony and evidence. She's also agreed to serve as our liaison during the legitimate mining partnership. Detective Nana paused. Akosua, on the other hand, has left the country. Word is she's in Dubai, trying to distance herself from the scandal. I felt a mix of relief and sadness about Akosua's departure. Despite everything she'd done, I couldn't entirely hate her. She'd been raised in a system that valued manipulation over integrity, and her actions, while destructive, had ultimately freed Kwame from an unhealthy relationship. And our partnership agreement with Mensah Mining? I asked Kofi. Finalized. 50-50 profit split, with you retaining land ownership and them providing expertise and equipment. The first drilling operation begins next month, and initial profits are projected within 6 months. Kwame reached over and took my hand. Are you sure about giving them this opportunity? After everything they put us through? I considered the question, watching the afternoon sun paint Accra's skyline through the office windows. I'm sure about building something sustainable. My grandmother always said the land would provide what our family needed when we needed it most. Right now, we need reconciliation and legitimate success more than we need revenge. Your grandmother was a wise woman, Detective Nana observed. But we should still maintain security measures. Desperate people sometimes make dangerous decisions. As if summoned by her warning, my phone buzzed with an unknown international number. I answered cautiously. Alma? It's Akosua. The room went silent. I put the phone on speaker. What do you want, Akosua? I want to apologize. Her voice sounded different, smaller, less confident. And I want to warn you. Warn me about what? My father isn't as resigned to this partnership as he appears. He's been making contacts with international mining corporations, trying to find ways to challenge your ownership of the land. Kwame leaned forward. What kind of challenges? Legal challenges, political pressure, maybe even physical intimidation. I don't know exactly, but I overheard phone calls before I left. He's not planning to honor your agreement long term. Detective Nana was already taking notes. Why are you telling us this? Because I realized something after that night at the engagement party. I spent so much time trying to manipulate Kwame into loving me that I never asked myself if I actually loved him. Akosua's voice broke slightly. The truth is, I was in love with the idea of controlling someone completely. That's not love. That's sickness. I found myself feeling unexpected sympathy for her. Where are you now? Dubai. I'm seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I became so obsessed with manipulation and control. It's not easy, confronting who you've become. And your father? He disowned me when I refused to come back and help with his schemes. Said I was a traitor to the family, just like Ya. Akosua laughed bitterly. Maybe we are. Maybe that's not a bad thing. After she hung up, we sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Kwame spoke. Do you think she's genuine? Or is this another manipulation? I think she's trying to be genuine, I replied. But whether we can trust her warnings is a different question. Detective Nana was already making calls to her security contacts. Regardless of her motives, we need to take the threat seriously. If Nana Mensah is planning to break the agreement, then we need to be prepared, I finished. What do you recommend? Enhanced security for you and your family, legal documentation of every interaction with the Mensah Corporation, and perhaps most importantly, we need to accelerate the mining timeline. Why? Because once gold is being extracted and sold, it becomes much harder for anyone to challenge your ownership. Possession and production create legal precedents that are difficult to overturn. Kofi nodded agreement. We can expedite all permits and approvals. If we move quickly, the first extraction could begin within 2 weeks instead of a month. I felt the baby flutter in my stomach, still too small for Kwame to feel, but a constant reminder of what I was protecting. This child would inherit a legacy of both wealth and responsibility. Do it, I decided. But I want everything documented, everything legal, everything transparent. If Nana Mensah wants to challenge us, he'll have to do it in court, not in shadows. As we prepared to leave the lawyer's office, my phone rang again. This time it was Ya. Oma, we have a problem. My father just called a family meeting for tonight. He wants all the mining contracts and partnership agreements brought to the house. That doesn't sound like a problem. Those are his copies of legitimate documents. That's what worries me. My father doesn't call emergency family meetings to review paperwork. He calls them when he's planning something that requires family loyalty. Or family silence, Detective Nana added grimly. I made a decision that surprised even me. Yeah, I'm coming to that meeting. What? Oma, that's not safe. It's not safe to let him plan in secret either. If Nana Mensah wants to break our agreement, he can explain his reasoning to my face. Oma, Kwame protested. You're pregnant. You can't put yourself at risk. I'm not putting myself at risk, I replied firmly. I'm protecting our future. All of our futures. But as we left the office and headed toward what might be the final confrontation with the Mensah family, I couldn't shake the feeling that some betrayals run so deep that even the best intentions can't prevent them from destroying everything in their path. The final showdown is coming. Will Oma's bold decision to confront Nana Mensah face-to-face end in victory or disaster? Comment your predictions below. The Mensah family compound sat on 5 acres of prime East Legon real estate, surrounded by high walls and security guards who looked more like military personnel than private security. As our convoy of 3 cars approached the main gate, I could see additional vehicles parked inside. This was indeed a significant family gathering. Last chance to reconsider, Detective Nana said from the driver's seat. We still don't know exactly what Nana Mensah is planning. That's exactly why I need to be here, I replied, checking the recording device hidden in my purse. If he's planning to break our legal agreement, I want it documented. Kwame squeezed my hand. I should go in first, test the waters. We go in together, I interrupted. As partners. That's what this is about. Partnership versus manipulation. The security guards waved us through after checking our identification, but I noticed they were more thorough than usual, even confiscating Detective Nana's obvious recording equipment. They didn't find my hidden device. The main house was a sprawling colonial-style mansion that screamed old money and established power. Ya met us at the front door, her face tense with worry. He's in the main conference room with about 15 family members and business associates, she whispered. I've never seen him this angry. What exactly did you tell him about our conversation? Nothing specific. Just that you wanted to attend tonight's meeting to ensure our partnership was proceeding smoothly. We were escorted through marble hallways lined with portraits of Mensa family patriarchs dating back to the colonial era. Each face seemed to stare down with the same expression of entitled authority that I'd seen on Nana Mensa's face. The conference room doors opened to reveal a scene that looked more like a corporate tribunal than a family meeting. Nana Mensa sat at the head of a long mahogany table, flanked by men in expensive suits who were clearly lawyers and business consultants. Other family members filled the remaining chairs, all eyes turning to us as we entered. Mrs. Asante, Nana Mensa's voice was formally cordial but carried an undertone of steel. How unexpected. I thought it was important to attend, given that we're business partners now, I replied, taking the seat directly across from him. Kwame sat beside me, with Detective Nana and Ya flanking us. Indeed. Partners. He pronounced the word as if it tasted unpleasant, which is precisely what I wanted to discuss with my family tonight. One of the lawyers leaned forward. Mrs. Asante, we've been reviewing the partnership agreement you negotiated with Mr. Mensa's company, and we've identified several irregularities. What kind of irregularities? I asked calmly. Questions about the validity of your land ownership, the legitimacy of the geological surveys, and the legal authority of the mining permits, the lawyer continued. We believe these issues warrant a renegotiation of the entire agreement. I smiled pleasantly. That's interesting, because I had our legal team review the same documents, and they found everything to be in perfect order. Nana Mensa's mask of politeness slipped slightly. Mrs. Asante, you're a schoolteacher. With all due respect, you lack the experience to navigate complex business negotiations. Perhaps it would be better if you accepted a simple buyout and left the actual mining operations to professionals. How much are you offering? I asked. The question seemed to surprise him. $50 million. Cash. For complete ownership of the land and all mineral rights. Murmurs around the table suggested this was a generous offer by their standards. But they had no idea of the true scope of what they were trying to buy. 50 million for land worth over $1 billion? I laughed softly. Mr. Mensa, now I understand why your family has been interested in my grandmother's property for so many years. That's quite a return on investment. $1 billion is a fantasy number, one of the consultants interjected. Realistic extraction and processing costs would reduce actual profits significantly. You're absolutely right, I agreed. Which is why I had independent geological surveys conducted by 3 different international companies. I opened my briefcase and began spreading documents across the table. The consensus estimate is actually $1.2 billion in extractable gold, with extraction costs of approximately $200 million. The room fell silent as the men examined the surveys. These weren't the preliminary reports they'd been expecting. These were comprehensive geological analyses that I'd commissioned using my own resources. That still doesn't address the legal questions about your ownership, Nana Mensa said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. You mean the legal questions your family has been planning to manufacture? I pulled out my phone and played a recording of Akoshua's warning about their plans to challenge my ownership. Several family members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Mrs. Asante, the lawyer said carefully, recorded conversations without consent are not admissible in court. But they're very useful for understanding the character of the people I'm dealing with, I replied. Which brings me to my actual reason for being here tonight. I stood up and walked to the head of the table, forcing Nana Mensa to look up at me. You've spent decades trying to acquire my family's land through manipulation, seduction, and legal intimidation. You've destroyed relationships, corrupted business practices, and damaged your own daughter's ability to trust and be trusted. Mrs. Asante, he began. I'm not finished. My voice carried the authority I'd learned from years of managing classroom discipline, but magnified by the knowledge of my own power. You have 2 choices. honor our legal partnership agreement and build legitimate wealth together, or continue your current path and face the legal consequences of your illegal mining operations.
You're threatening me? His voice was dangerous. I'm offering you salvation, I corrected. Because here's what you don't understand, Mr. Mensa. I don't need you. I have the resources to develop this land independently. I offered you a partnership because I believe in building bridges instead of burning them. But I won't be manipulated, intimidated, or cheated. Yas stood up from her chair. Father, she's right. We've been approaching this all wrong for years. We could have had legitimate success instead of constantly scheming. Sit down, yeah, he snapped. You betrayed this family enough. She saved this family, I interjected, from itself. The tension in the room was palpable. I could see Nana Mensa calculating, trying to determine if he could still find a way to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Finally, Kwame spoke. Sir, I understand the pressure you're under. I made similar mistakes when I thought money and status were more important than integrity. But I can tell you from experience, that path only leads to losing everything that actually matters. And what would a failed construction contractor know about business success? Nana Mensa's contempt was undisguised. He knows what it's like to choose greed over family, I answered, and what it takes to choose differently. I placed a contract on the table in front of Nana Mensa. This is an amended partnership agreement. Same profit-sharing terms, but with additional clauses about transparency, legal compliance, and mutual respect. Sign it tonight, or find out what happens when someone with $1 billion land holding decides to become your competitor instead of your partner. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Nana Mensa picked up a pen. You realize, he said as he signed, this doesn't end our family's involvement in Ghana's mining industry. I wouldn't want it to, I replied, but ends your family's involvement in manipulation and corruption, at least where my business interests are concerned. As we prepared to leave, Yao walked us to the door. Thank you, she said quietly, for giving us a chance to do things right. Thank your sister, too, I replied. Her warning probably saved both our families from a much uglier confrontation. 6 months later, I stood on an observation platform overlooking the most successful mining operation in Ghana's eastern region. The Ama Asante Mensa Mining Partnership had exceeded all profit projections, and the gold being extracted was financing schools, hospitals, and infrastructure projects throughout the region. Kwame joined me on the platform, his hand resting on my now prominent belly. Our son, we'd learned the gender last week, was due in 2 months. Any regrets? He asked. About which part? Discovering I was wealthy, publicly humiliating your fiancé, or taking you back? All of it. I considered the question seriously. I regret that it took a betrayal to teach us both who we really are, but I don't regret fighting for our family, even though I nearly destroyed it, especially because you nearly destroyed it. Now we both know what we're capable of losing and what we're willing to do to protect what matters. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your success. Some people deserve happy endings. A friend. This time, I didn't worry about who was watching or what they knew. Some stories end with justice served and lessons learned. Some betrayals, when handled with wisdom instead of revenge, become the foundation for something stronger than what existed before. Our son would grow up knowing that family loyalty, business integrity, and personal courage matter more than money or status. But he would also grow up with enough money to never have to choose between doing right and living well. That, I thought, watching the sun set over our thriving mining operation was exactly what my grandmother had in mind when she held on to that land for 40 years, waiting for the right time to reveal its secrets. Some stories end with revenge. Others end with redemption. The best ones end with both. What an incredible journey. Did Ama and Kwame's story end the way you expected? Comment your thoughts on this tale of betrayal, forgiveness, and billion-dollar justice. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Stories_by Nefertino, and share with anyone who loves a story about karma, family values, and the power of standing up for yourself. What story should we tell next? Let us know in the comments below.